Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Anthony Priori. I'm the digital marketing manager at TPGI. We're just going to wait 1 minute as people sign in and we'll get started briefly.
Hmm.
I still see a couple people trickling in, so we're just going to give it 1 more minute and then we'll get started. All right, thank you everyone for joining us today for our webinar, The Secret Sauce for Inclusive Dining, How Accessibility Drives Loyalty. So before we get started, I just have a few housekeeping items I'd like us to get to. So firstly, this session is being recorded and we will email everyone the recording after the event. Secondly, we have captions available, so feel free to turn those on and use them as needed. Next, we will have time for live Q&A later in the webinar, so please use the Q&A box and we'll answer as many questions as we can at the end of the presentation. Note the Q&A box is a little easier for us to find questions. Sometimes if you send them to the chat, they can get lost. So please be mindful of that and send them to the Q&A box if possible. And then lastly, if anyone needs any accessibility support, training, or usability testing, we will send out an email with a link to schedule time to speak with one of our experts after the event. So with that, I'll pass it off and let our team get started. Thank you for attending, everyone.
Let's go ahead and introduce our speakers. We're going to be covering the secret sauce for inclusive dining, how accessibility drives loyalty. We're going to be joined by Rick Smith, our business development director from ELO, David Swallow, the principal UX consultant for TPGI, Tracy Murray, director of business development at Vispero, and Marshall Law, co-founder and business development for Rivalry Technology. Why don't you take it away?
Thanks. This is Rick. Thank you for everyone for joining. Just wanted to start a little bit here by just talking about loyalty and accessibility in general. We're going to get much more into details as we go. One way I like to look at this is the goal of having a successful loyalty program through restaurants is for a few things. You want to make your customers' shopping experience easier, but we also want more data and more analytics about what our customers are purchasing. So if we are having self-service solutions that are not accessible to those with a variety of challenges or different abilities, then we're leaving a lot of that analytics and data on the table. So if we take a look at general population numbers, in the United States, 2.2% of population is visually impaired. So that's about 7.2 million people. So you can assume that in a traditional QSR or restaurant experience, that could be just from this division of customer base. That could be an additional 5 to 10 orders per day that we're not going to gather. And more importantly, we're not going to gather the data on as well. So if we take a look at an average order of almost $11, per day, 5 to 10 orders, that adds up very quickly in terms of store revenue, but also in terms of loyalty information that we could be gathering. We're going to go more and more onto some results of surveys that we've done, that TPGI and Vispero have done on this topic. But it could also be as simple as in your free time, just go to Google and type accessible kiosks in restaurants. Go to Reddit and take a look, and you'll see that this is the most loyal group of customers you can ever want to have. And if you can accommodate what they need, they're going to spread that word for you. Your loyalty is going to increase. And don't forget also that if we just look at the visually impaired, for example, when they come to your locations, they're going to come with other people. So you're not only just expanding your loyalty for the visually impaired market, you're expanding your loyalty in general because they're going to bring their coworkers, their families, their friends, and those are additional opportunities to grow your loyalty base as well. From here, I think we will talk a little bit about a survey, and I will hand off into David Swallow to talk about the survey results.
Thanks, Rick. Can I just check? Can you still hear me?
You're loud and clear.
Great stuff. I've just helpfully my headset's just failed. So, yes, the survey. Sorry about this. At TPGI, we were keen to understand the experiences of people who are blind or low vision when it comes to accessing restaurants, and in particular their use of technology provided by restaurants. So between February and March this year, Vispero and TPGI surveyed over 600 blind and low vision people, 632 to be precise, about their restaurant experiences. Now, we included a number of closed questions from which we were able to derive summary statistics, but the really interesting findings came out of the open-ended questions where respondents described their dining experiences and in many cases vented their frustrations about the accessibility of restaurants. From these findings, we were able to make some recommendations that restaurants can follow to provide a more inclusive, enjoyable restaurant experience for people with disabilities. So I'm going to give you an overview of our key findings and recommendations today. But if you'd like a little more detail, we recently published a white paper called Accessibility Drives Loyalty, which can be downloaded from the TPGI website. And we'll put up a QR code at the end of today's session. Okay, so our first key finding was that most blind and low vision customers have encountered negative experiences at restaurants. So I hope it doesn't come as a surprise to you that people with disabilities enjoy restaurants just like everyone else. The vast majority of respondents were frequent restaurant goers, either for sit-down meals or for takeout, and more than half of respondents used restaurants between once a week and a few times a week. But despite enjoying dining out, people with disabilities regularly encounter ableism in restaurants. So that is discrimination or prejudice against people with disabilities. So of the 632 blind and low vision respondents, a majority, 58%, have had a negative experience at a restaurant because of their disability. For some, this was due to an inaccessible website, which prevented them from finding information about a restaurant, including menus. For others, it was due to the inaccessibility of digital kiosks and payment systems at restaurants, which made it difficult to order food with confidence. The physical accessibility of restaurants, including entrances, restrooms, tables, and seating, was a source of frustration for many respondents. Similarly, inaccessible physical menus and signage around the restaurant made it difficult for some to determine what's available or how much it costs. And then compounding many of these issues was low awareness of the needs of disabled people and negative attitudes towards disability from restaurant staff members. Okay, another key finding was that accessibility issues affect loyalty of customers who are blind or low vision. So the accessibility of a restaurant has a significant impact on customers' loyalty. Over 3/4 of respondents considered the accessibility of a restaurant to have a moderate or significant impact on their willingness to repeat their visit. And this was summarized by one respondent who said, quote, "If they are willing to provide me what I need to have a good experience, I will come back. If they are dismissive and not considering me or my disability, then they are not worth me spending money in their establishment." And there were many other comments that reinforce this idea that the accessibility of a restaurant has a significant impact on customers' loyalty. Key finding number 3 was that customers who are blind or low vision respond in different ways to accessibility and ableist issues. So some are resilient when faced with challenges and refuse to let it bother them. So for instance, one respondent said, "Similar situations happen regularly enough that I don't usually let it affect me. I just deal with the misconceptions, try to educate when I can, and otherwise just make it work." Some are resigned to experiencing difficulties and feel like they will only encounter the same experience at other restaurants. So one respondent said, "People are just not educated enough or aware enough to respect me as a person. It happens all the time, so I just have to live with it." Another said, "Finding accessibility in restaurants is so rare that when I do find it, I will become a loyal customer for life. At this point, I will settle for restaurants with crummy accessibility as long as I am being treated well." Basically, what I'm saying is restaurants for blind people aren't a great experience, but I refuse to stay home, so I take what I can get. Others are more defiant and will seek to make their feelings known to management, creating a learning opportunity for the restaurant and its staff. So for instance, one respondent said, "It makes me more forceful in making any server aware of my disability and constantly reminding them of it, as well as reporting anyone to management who violates my rights or disrespects me because of my disability. Also, if my experience is that bad, I will go online and give an unfavorable review of the place." But for many, it is a humiliating and degrading experience that will mean they never visit the establishment again. So one said, "I refuse to spend my money with a business not willing to be accepting of all people. In the next 10 or 15 years, we may all have some type of disability. When I come across terrible service, I now say, today me, but tomorrow it could be you." The next key finding was that customers who are blind or low vision are more likely to return to an accessible restaurant. So an accessible customer experience has a clear impact on the likelihood of returning to a restaurant. The majority, some 92% of respondents, said that they would be likely or very likely to return to a restaurant that has an accessible customer experience. But it's not the only factor that influences a return visit. One respondent said, "If a restaurant is making an effort to be accessible, I want to support them. Of course, the service and food has to be good as well. I won't eat garbage just because it comes with an accessible experience." Another key finding was that inclusive restaurant experiences are important to customers who are blind or low vision. So the independence and self-reliance that an inclusive restaurant provides is extremely important to people with disabilities. Over 3/4 of respondents felt it is very important or extremely important that a restaurant is inclusive of people with disabilities. One respondent pointed out that many people with disabilities are parents or caregivers for others. We need to be able to accessibly order for those we are responsible for and dine safely with them, ensuring their needs are met as well. And another made the point that in general, an accessible restaurant tends to come with a far more pleasant customer experience. And then our final key finding was that blind and low vision customers are reluctant to pay more for accessibility. Now, this was a bit of a curveball, to be honest. We asked respondents whether they would be willing to pay more for products or services from a restaurant that has an accessible customer experience. Now, I'll admit I was expecting this to be a firm no. But when it comes to paying extra, it seems people with disabilities are conflicted. So just under half, 48% of respondents, said they would be willing to pay more for an accessible customer experience. Respondents generally feel that they shouldn't have to pay more for accessibility, but for some, it's a pragmatic acknowledgement of the potential costs involved. One said, I know it would be hard for many small mom and pop places to be fully inclusive, so I just want staff to have customer service and a willingness to help. For others, it's a kind of resigned acceptance that paying more is the only way to get an accessible experience. One respondent said, I really shouldn't have to pay more for accessibility, but that is a reality we live in. If you want great customer service, you have to pay for it. However, as respondents were keen to point out, by considering accessibility from the start and designing inclusive restaurant experiences, accessibility doesn't have to cost a premium. One respondent said, accessibility should not be an afterthought. It should be included in the original design. So I would not want to pay extra to have my needs met just like anybody else's. Another said, I don't think accessibility should be a selling feature of a product or restaurant. It should be acknowledged and implemented because it's the right thing to do. So what can restaurants do to create accessible and inclusive experiences for people with disabilities, and in doing so, drive loyalty? Next slide, please. One of our key recommendations is that restaurants provide an accessible website or app with information about the restaurant. So blind or low vision customers usually start planning their restaurant visits online. So they rely on restaurant websites or apps to find out key details like the menu, location, and accessibility options. So restaurants should make sure that these websites and apps are designed to meet accessibility requirements, and that it's easier for customers to complete key tasks like browsing the menu, finding prices, locating allergy information about menu items, making or modifying a reservation, finding directions to the restaurant, or ordering and paying for takeout food. It's not just about meeting technical accessibility standards. It's about making sure everyone can get the information they need to enjoy their visit. Our second recommendation is to ensure digital kiosk and payment devices are accessible. So digital kiosk and payment devices are becoming increasingly common in restaurants around the world, offering convenience and efficiency for customers. However, for blind and low vision customers, these technologies can present significant challenges. So ensure that payment devices are designed in a way that blind people can independently order food and complete transactions. And this includes providing gratuities and paying with coupons or discount codes without relying on assistance from others and without having to sacrifice privacy. So one respondent said, if my wife wasn't at a restaurant with me, I wouldn't have been able to successfully use their tablet to check out, ensuring that I put my trust in the wait staff to take my card and process for the successful payment. It puts me in an awkward position when I'm not able to independently determine tips and have to provide information to the wait staff of how much I'd like to tip. Another key recommendation is to help staff members become more disability aware. So restaurant staff play a crucial role in creating inclusive dining experiences for all customers, including those who are blind or low vision. Their positive attitudes and awareness of disability are essential in providing assistance when needed. So provide staff training to foster and encourage an environment of empathy and understanding so that restaurant staff can ensure that customers with disabilities feel welcomed, valued, and able to fully enjoy their dining experience. Another key thing that restaurants can do is provide accessible menus and other in-restaurant dining information. So in restaurants, it's crucial that physical menus and other dining information are accessible to everyone, including those who are blind or low vision. So when menus and signage are designed with inclusivity in mind, everyone can feel confident and informed when making choices and moving about the restaurant. So provide clear and readable menus with options like large print or braille to help blind and low vision customers easily understand what's available and how much it costs. And make sure information on menus in accessible formats is kept up to date, including prices and the items available. Provide accessible signage, including braille, throughout the restaurant to help customers independently locate restrooms and exits. One respondent said, on one occasion, the braille menu had outdated prices, so I was surprised when the bill came. They ended up honouring the prices shown in the braille menu. And then our final recommendation is to improve the physical accessibility of the restaurant. So restaurants need to be physically accessible for everyone, including those with disabilities. Often the most effective changes are small adjustments to layout. So pay attention to providing enough space between tables for easy navigation, accessible seating, limiting excess noise, and making sure restaurants and entrances are easy to reach. By making these changes, restaurants create a welcoming environment where everyone can enjoy their meal comfortably. And that brings me to the end of this overview. Hopefully I've provided some insights into the experiences of blind and low vision people when it comes to accessing restaurants, and given a sense of what we can do to create inclusive dining experiences that will drive customer loyalty. And I should stress that this is only a first pass of the data, and we've only just scratched the surface really in terms of data analysis. So we plan to conduct more in-depth analysis and dig into some of those themes that emerged with the intention of publishing further findings. So please look out for that in future. And with that, I'll hand back to Rick.
Thank you, David.
Thank you. That was a lot of really good information and very relevant. So what we're going to talk a little bit about is what a accessible self-service solution could look like. So we're going to go over what's on the screen right now, partly because following this, you'll see an actual use case using this exact solution with these exact partners. So I'm going to start off by talking about how you choose hardware that are going to help with your accessibility needs. And the answer to that is a fairly simple one. It's about modularity, and it's about paying attention to some key factors that are spelled out in the ADA Accessibility Act. So from a hardware perspective, we know that reach is always going to be an accessibility concern. So we want to make sure that any usable part of a kiosk solution is not going to exceed 48 inches in height in a standard environment. There are some separate things that could change if you're wall mounting, if it's a self-checkout system, where you have a little bit of flexibility on that height depending on the reach distance as well. But let's just concentrate right now on your most traditional restaurant solution. So an example with the kiosk you see on the right, this is Elo's Wallaby Pro. It can hold displays of anywhere from 22 to 27 inches by default. the reason I bring this up is it's important to factor in that no matter which size display you choose there, our 48-inch mark is going to be exactly 50% of that screen. So nothing on the top half of that screen is going to be, or I'm sorry, anything on the bottom half of that screen is not going to be above 48 inches, which really plays a part into that partnership with a great software solution that has the ability to shrink content in a software ADA mode, if necessary. Another thing that you can do to get around that, and likely a more preferable solution, is with a tactile ADA keypad. You'll see that on the image to the right. Right below the screen, it's kind of that diamond shaped thing with that has 6 buttons on it. There's arrow keys, a select key, there's a headphone jack and a volume button. The great thing about a tactile device like this is it solves more than one ADA requirement. The headphone jack allows a visually impaired customer to plug in their headset and have an audio tour of what is on the screen, utilizing a partner like JAWS for Kiosk, having their software running on that to be a screen reader aspect. But also it gives you the ability to not worry so much about that maximum reach, because now if someone's in a wheelchair and they come up to this kiosk, they can use that keypad to navigate around, and now everything is within reach on that display because that keypad allows you to navigate and select there. The biggest thing that I want to point out when you're choosing a solution for accessibility needs is it's really all about the partnerships. I have yet to find one company that comes in and says that they are the expert in every part of this solution. So at Elo, we concentrate on what we are good at. We concentrate on that hardware design, the functionality, and also making sure that from an OS level, we provide the correct support and help to our partners in developing their solutions onto our framework. From there, you want to choose a terrific software partner that is ADA and accessibility focused. Marshall with Rivalry Tech is going to talk about that, as well as a program like just having that tactile keypad's not enough. You need to have the audio portion of that, which is where a partner like Vispero and their product JAWS comes in. So really pay attention to selecting providers that have these partnerships in place, because it's through these partnerships that you get to a total solution that is accessible and deployable for you. So I'll hand this off to Tracy to talk a little bit about JAWS and how that plays a part of the solution.
Perfect. Thanks, Rick. So Rick has absolutely set this up in a great way, that the tactile device that he's talking about on here is a hardware component. So by installing that and, having Elo include that on the solution helps with, wheelchair accessibility and continuing with the ADA height issue at the 48 inches. But that's not enough. That device is hardware only, so you need something that is software driven, that is the voice guided navigation. And that's our product that we call JAWS for Kiosks. And so JAWS for Kiosk is a screen reader. So basically what it does is when an individual plugs in their headphones, we now make that kiosk talk. So that experience that the customer is going through at the kiosk, as far as in this case, ordering food, everything about it is going to be talking to them. And Marshall from Rivalry Tech has a great video that is going to show shortly here. And when we're watching that video, you'll see the individual up at the kiosk using it, but then you're going to hear a female voice, and that's actually JAWS for Kiosk talking there. And so after the video, I'll talk a little bit more about what JAWS for Kiosk is and the little accessibility options that it offers. But pay attention during that video for that female voice, how it guides the individual using that. And so with that, Marshall's going to show us this great solution that they've developed and put together. and included JAWS for Kiosk on it.
Yeah, thanks, Tracy. I appreciate it. Marshall Law here, co-founder at Rivalry Tech. Proud to be a part of this panel and this webinar today. It's been a very easy decision for Rivalry Tech from the start. We were very fortunate in early days to see the profound impact that you have when you have accessible digital products. One of our first accounts was a minor league baseball team. And I am not kidding you, the impact that just having accessible digital products in that stadium did for our company and for the fans. We had dads come up to us after the games, literally in tears, telling us how we had changed the game experience for them, bringing their kids and their families to the ballpark because we provided them digital products with accessibility options on it. So we've always operated from a spirit of inclusivity because of what we saw from an impact that it had on people early on. And you want to talk about driving loyalty? We saw orders from that same dad every time we showed up that first season, every game. So very appreciative, like I said, a very profound impact on him. And when we saw that and we started getting into different digital products like self-serve kiosks, it was very important to us to make sure that we got it right. And so we started to research who was best in class when it came to making the best hardware that had ADA compliant options on them. Who was the best when it came to what JAWS for Kiosk provides, which is accessibility software. So we made sure that we locked, arms with both of these providers, both ELO and TPGI, because they were the ones that we kept hearing over and over of the products that they provide and how good they were and how easy they were for people with these type of needs to be able to use. And both of these companies have walked us through and guided us to where we can feel very good about claiming to be the gold standard when it comes to low vision, accessibility software. Go ahead and go to the next slide, and I'll kind of show where we're using some of these items. So this Frenchies case study is fascinating, and the coolest part of this being a Frenchies video, which Michelle did an amazing job on, you'll see here in a second, is probably, Rick, the world's most well-known visually impaired celebrity, Stevie Wonder, is good friends with the Frenchies family. And when he comes to Houston, he eats at Frenchies all the time and has used our software with JAWS for Kiosk on it and the ELO hardware. So it's great that we got the opportunity to make this video at Frenchies and knowing that Stevie has used it and approved it. Anthony, go ahead and go to the next slide and you get the video started.
The inspiration for installing kiosks at Frenchies Chicken was to ensure that everyone could place an order the way that they wanted to place it. When a customer uses the touchscreen kiosk to make an order, it's extremely intuitive. It's actually the exact same process that they would make whether they were in the drive-thru or at the counter, except now they're driving it themselves. Deploying the ELO kiosk powered by Rivalry Tech was extremely easy, almost plug and play. One of the primary reasons why we selected Rivalry Tech was that they really sat down and worked with us to make sure that the customer experience at the kiosk was no different than the customer experience in the drive-thru or at the counter. It was just done on a different medium. The ordering experience for a visually impaired customer is really not that much different than any other customer. The only difference is they'll primarily be working with the kiosk. So once they plug their headphones in the kiosk, the experience is completely done via audio and 4 keys that they're able to navigate through the menu.
Welcome to the Kiosk Express Lane menu. You are viewing Frenchies Favorites products. Press the right key to browse categories. Press the middle button to select products from the category. Press the middle button on a product to select it. After adding your products, press the down key to go through your cart. You have selected the King's Choice. The cost is $12.99.
What we really love about this process is that it's done in a very self-paced environment. So all of our visually impaired customers, they can come in and place their order, not feel rushed and not feel uncomfortable. They're able to do it at their own pace. It's very important to us that as we place kiosks into our various restaurants, that technology continues to evolve and there's a hardware platform that is solid and also continues to evolve, that all of our customers have the ability to use them, including our visually impaired customers.
Thank you, Marshall.
So to follow up a little bit on JAWS for Kiosk, so the female voice, as I mentioned, that you heard in there, that was actually our screen reader, JAWS for Kiosk, talking through this. So a little bit about JAWS for Kiosk, and then I'm going to let Marshall, talk further about how his software solution pulled everything together. Is that our JAWS for Kiosk solution screen reader is available in multiple languages. So right now we have at least 32 different languages that it's reading. So while this demonstration was showing English only reading, if your kiosk solutions are multiple languages, we have those available. So it can read through that. It's also, you can customize it from a male to a female voice. And then once you get into the different languages, there's dialect choices in there. So again, very customizable through that. It's built for self-service devices. So we have a signature product, JAWS. This is a pared down version of that is directed just for the self-service environment, and it does run locally. So there's no internet that's required to be on the kiosks for JAWS to run. It's a small file that runs, and it runs through an auto stop and start. So what that means is, as you saw in the video, when someone comes up to the kiosk and they want to use the screen reader portion of it, they're going to plug in their headphones and JAWS will automatically start. It will start talking. It will go through the entire solution all the way to the end. And then when they're done with it, they will unplug their headphones, and then they can continue on to then go pick up their food. If the person that comes behind them is a sighted individual and doesn't need JAWS to be talking, it won't be doing that because they won't be plugging in their headphones, or they could also use the touch screen to maneuver through it. You also saw in there that they were using the keypad, the tactile device. So we support the Storm keypads, which is what's shown in this video, or headphone adapters like Elo has an audio adapter, or other tactile devices, or just a straight touchscreen. If your kiosk solution is touchscreen only, maybe it's tablet based. And so, it's a handheld tablet based solution. You don't need to have a tactile device to it. We just simply have somebody plug into the headphone jack on there and then touch the button, and JAWS will activate through there. We also offer expert services in kiosk consulting. So as mentioned back when David was talking about the survey results, some of the comments that came out of it was, we'd like to see, the kiosk solutions, the self-service devices be accessible. That's where JAWS for Kiosk comes in. If your restaurants or locations have a mobile app, we can help with that, as well as your website. So we're here to help make everything accessible for everyone. So with that, I'll let Marshall kind of continue on about the great application that they pulled together here.
Yeah, thanks, Tracy. Look, we're working with some of the best developers in the world to be able to provide this type of software for low vision or visually impaired. That's why we teamed up with TPGI and the JAWS for kiosks when we decided to go into self-serve kiosks. But our background goes, back even into mobile as well. We are one of the few companies that is in the MLB app, where you have to have ADA compliant software inside of there as well. So if you're looking for a team of people from a hardware and software standpoint that is operating at the highest levels, I mean, we're providing, ADA compliant software at Fenway Park and Citi Field for the Mets right now. So some of the biggest fan venues, most successful fan venues in the world. So when we're doing it for people like that, the credibility that comes behind that, you can guarantee that your QSR is going to be in good hands. We're working daily to improve that. Like I said, with the spirit of inclusivity, not just from an ADA compliance standpoint, we have 105 languages that are in our language translation software on all of our devices, right? We're at 30 right now, Tracy, right, with JAWS for Kiosk, but we're building that every day. Our developers are in weekly communication with the developers at TPGI to make sure that we are providing the best product out there. When you go through an order workflow from a customer standpoint, CEO from Frenchies say how he loves it because it is just like you were going to the counter or through the drive-through or through mobile, is what it's like when you're ordering from a self-serve kiosk from Rivalry Tech.
Thank you, Marshall. You want to go ahead and move us forward one more? Anthony, you want to field some questions for us?
Yes, absolutely, I do. Thank you, everyone, for an amazing presentation. So, firstly, we do have a question here. I've heard that not all of my kiosks need to be ADA compliant. Is this true?
I'm happy to jump in here and then probably get some further explanation from some others on the panel. So there's no real good answer to that question. We can tell you that today, through government solutions, they require at least 25% of your kiosk to be ADA accessible. There is legislation going on as we speak that is extremely likely to be at least 50% here in the very near future. One reason I like to bring that up is a lot of businesses will just follow what these government recommendations are, whether they are letter of the law or not. But what's really important to know there is, as I told you today, 25% likely, very likely to become 50%. There's nothing stopping that from becoming 75% through Europe and their Accessibility Act. That's becoming 100% through the European businesses. So the real thing that I like to say here is, while technically you're not required, it is going to be much simpler for you to make all of your kiosks ADA accessible from the start. It's easier to deploy them that way, but it's also much more cost effective. In general, if I were to look at some of the things that you have to put together to make it fully accessible, it's likely to be a few $100s in added expense to that initial purchase. If I were to not utilize, if I did not put that tactile device, if I did not already have JAWS loaded and ready to go, to send a technician out later to do that stuff when things do become regulation is going to be much, much more expensive. So if something were $300 to do from the start, it's likely to be, $600 to $1,000 if you have to send a technician on site to accommodate those things. And what I also try to coach my end users through when making these decisions, it's less about ensuring that you are following whatever the law and the regulation is. And it's more from a business perspective, it's more about preventing a lawsuit. We've seen recently some lawsuits come across for non-accessible solutions that, technically they're not government-based businesses, but just for them not having a way for a visually impaired person to check in at I don't want to name the companies, but to check into the establishment, enabled a lawsuit to be given, even though there was no law against it. And two of these businesses very recently lost these lawsuits for tens of millions of dollars. So you're really trying to prevent that. And that's all without it just being the right thing to do. And as I said earlier, if you do it the right way, you're going to gain that loyalty off of that, and your business is going to expand. Yeah. honestly, the additional ADA features that you're going to put are likely an ROI of your first few weeks of being in business rather than in a longer period of time. But I'd love to pass off to Tracy or Marshall as well, or David, if they have any additional input on that.
Yeah, I'll step in first, Rick. I look, the simple math on that is not every QSR is going to have 4, you know, if you're just following regulations, 4 kiosks and one of them has to be ADA compliant. Usually it's just 1 or 2 in it. So the negligible costs combined with the spirit of what you're saying to your customers, I think it's a no-brainer. When we talk to people about, why wouldn't you do it? They kind of think about it, and the answer is always, well, yeah, well, of course. Well, of course we should. Just from a do the right thing standpoint, there's all those other things that come into it as well, Rick. But usually when owners or, GMs of QSRs, restaurants, wherever we're putting these kiosks in, when they just take a step back and look at what, the messages they're sending to their customers by doing it, that's the biggest part of it.
Yeah, and especially in today's labor crisis, a lot of times we've relied on a human to assist rather than technology. And today you just don't have enough humans available to do that. It used to be that you could walk into a QSR, and if you were visually impaired, you can go to the front counter and ask for a Braille menu. That's not as easy today. So why not just have it available on your kiosk with JAWS and the appropriate tactile device, and make that customer experience that much smoother.
Awesome. Great. The next question I see here might be directed more at David, but it says, you mentioned that 92% of people you surveyed said that they would likely return to a restaurant that has accessible customer experience. I expected that figure to be higher, if not 100%. Do you have any idea why that's not the case?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and well spotted. I think the reason why that statistic isn't as high as you might expect is that some respondents were keen to stress that accessibility, while important, isn't the only factor when deciding whether to return to a restaurant. Other factors that people mention include, the quality of the food, the price of the food, noise levels, was mentioned, the overall ambience of the restaurant. There's a good quote. A quote from a respondent was, "Good food and good hospitality from the wait staff is as important as accessibility for me to return to a restaurant." So I think while accessibility certainly drives loyalty, that's a big part of it, there are other factors at play, as there would be for any other customer.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Looks like another question here that maybe you'd be able to answer, David. One of the survey recommendations was to ensure kiosk and payment devices are accessible. I was wondering, what are issues that people have encountered?
Okay, yeah. Another good question. The survey respondents appear to have had very poor experiences with kiosks and payment devices in the past, particularly anything with a touch screen but no screen reader, making it pretty much impossible to browse menus and order food. Several respondents also mentioned drinks machines, drinks fountain, automatic machines in restaurants that rely on touchscreens to select a drink. And then to make things worse, in many situations, the wait staff have been reluctant to assist customers who are struggling. So I think to many respondents of the survey, a restaurant that uses kiosks and touchscreens to order and pay is a massive red flag, sadly. And many of the survey respondents said that they'd avoid restaurants that use them. So I think even though we've overcome many of the accessibility problems with kiosks, as we've seen today, there are very accessible kiosk solutions out there now. I think the industry is going to have to sort of work bit harder to overcome those existing negative perceptions of kiosks from people with disabilities, and demonstrate that it's perfectly possible to have an accessible customer experience using a kiosk or a payment device, if you're blind or low vision.
David, I'll add on to that, because this has been a personal experience of ours as we've, like I said, teamed up with Tracy and Rick on this. When we first started doing self-serve kiosks, as we evolved the company, we were extremely disappointed in the industry and how few people had the JAWS for kiosk or screen reading software out there for low vision or visually impaired. There were a few that had the kiosk enabler half screen type things, but very few had a tactile keypad or something to be able to provide an accessible, platform for low vision people to do it. And what was even worse, David, is when Tracy started challenging me to go out there and see who was doing what, because we wanted to be best in class ourselves. I would go to these, I won't name them QSRs, and I would see the tactile devices on the kiosk, and I would plug in and they wouldn't work. And sadly, it was over 50% of the kiosks that I would try to plug into every airport or QSR that I went to. They didn't work. They tried to show that they had a solution, but they really didn't. So don't do that. Don't throw a keypad on a kiosk to keep from getting sued, because somebody eventually is going to plug into that and see that it doesn't work. If you're going to do it right. And the team that's on this panel is a team that really does it right.
Great. I see another question here from Dan. Have you heard any updates on the release date from the Access Board on new kiosk or self-serve on the new kiosk or self-service system rule? Throw that one up to the team.
I'll take that. Right now, we don't have a date that they've established or they submitted. It's been indicated towards the end of the year, but that can change. That's something that we stay on top of. At our company, we have, I believe it's 22 different individuals that sit on the different committees and governing boards out there to help with input. So as soon as we hear anything, we get all that information out. So we'll make sure to post that. Our marketing team does a great job of that, posting any updates or any communications that are coming out around that. So as soon as we know about it, we'll let everyone know about it.
Great. Thank you, Tracy. Another question here. How do you tip on a payment device without speech?
Well, currently, with the regulations that come across for chip and pin, once you're on the kiosk application and it goes to a payment device, that communication goes through a third party. It's through a dedicated internet connection. And so once that transaction starts to go to the payment device, everything goes silent. And then when that payment device comes back and with it approved or denied, then JAWS for kiosk is then sent that signal, and then it can speak from there. Currently, there's only one provider out there that we work with, Stripe, that has enabled their payment device to have JAWS for kiosk on it. So when you're going through that, adding the tip on there, if you're doing that through the payment device during that time, if you were on a Stripe, that would help. That would be announced to you. The other option would be if during your application, as you're ordering your food, like you were seeing in the Frenchies application, when they go to check out, if the application has that before it hits the payment device for final processing, then it can be announced at that time.
Yeah. And that's how it works for us, Anthony, because you have your headphones on, right? That's the key when you plugged into the Storm Switch with the JAWS for kiosk software, is you're giving those tipping options before you actually tap to pay. And that's read through the screen reader that JAWS for kiosk provides.
Awesome. Another question for David here. How can a blind person use a touch screen?
Okay. Yeah. Well,
David, I can answer that. From our perspectives, we have that built in because JAWS for kiosk integration provides that. So we do provide the kiosk, the tactile, the storm switch that you can see right here, the tactile keypad. In addition, though, the way JAWS works on all of our self-serve kiosks is there's a swiping function, right? So you swipe once to the right and it advances the order. And when you want to get to a point where you want to select something, you double tap the screen. That is announced when you first plug into the kiosk, and it gives you directions. It tells you all of these options on how you can get through this customer order workflow process, either by using the keypad or by using the swipe function. So I love when we go to conventions, Tracy, and we're standing there and I'm looking away from the screen and I'm just using my finger to get to the next product. And then of course I hear it and I double tap and it selects it. And then I go to the next product and then I swipe a different way to get to the next category. So that's how it's done, Anthony. It's done with the swiping process with your finger on the screen. You don't need to see anything on the screen because you can hear where you are in the workflow by double tapping, tapping, or swiping on the screen. And it's anywhere on the screen. You don't have to know where you are from a standpoint on the screen. You can do that swiping action or that tapping action from anywhere on the screen. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I did. That sounds great. I'm not seeing any other questions at the moment, so I think, and we're obviously just about at time, so I'm going to put up the contact information here on screen. But yeah, I'm not sure if there's any parting words for our panelists before we wrap up, but I'm not seeing any other questions, so I think we're close to the end.
Yeah, I'll just say thank you very much for everyone's time. It was a pleasure to be able to do this and to sit with this panel. As you see, our contact information is up there. Feel free to reach out with any questions or needs that you have, and we will make sure that we steer you in the right direction.
And we also have one final screen that's got the QR code on there. There we go. So this would give, you can scan to download this, but we'll also be sending out the recording for this so that you'll have, again, our contact information and the scan to download the survey that David talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like Tracy said, we'll send out the recording and you'll get this slide deck with that as well as other resources. So thank you very much to our panel and thank you all for attending. Have an awesome rest of your day.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
Everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a
Bye.
fantastic
See ya.
day.